And welcome everyone to Fins Nation. I'm your host, Louis Sung, and for this show, we're going to be discussing the Miami Dolphins signing Mike White to be the backup quarterback, as well as possibly the steal of the offseason, so far anyway, as Miami signed linebacker David Long Jr. to a 2-year, $11 million deal. But before we get too far into that, just want to go ahead and mention that this show is brought to you by PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is a revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues, whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, one of each. It's up to you to decide. You can choose the over or the under on those individual players' fantasy projections, whether that's individual stats or the classic fantasy point projections. They will give you free squares. They will give you Taco Tuesday promos, which today, when you're listening to this, they should be preparing that right now, as well as Flex Friday specials to where you can get your money back if you lose or even multiply the amount of money you can normally win. So with offers like that, it's really hard to justify not signing up at this point. So use the promo code FIVE, that's F-I-V-E, you have to spell it out, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you first sign up using that promo code. Again, that's promo code FIVE, F-I-V-E. Go to PrizePicks.com, sign up, get your free $100 to go ahead and start playing and making some extra cash today. Also, this show is brought to you by All Pro Construction Builders. If you're a South Florida resident and you're looking to protect your home or business with impact-rated windows and doors, make sure you contact All Pro Construction Builders. They specialize in impact windows and door installations for residential and commercial properties. All Pro Construction Builders is a state-certified, licensed, and insured general contractor, and they service Miami-Dade, Monroe, Broward County. Basically, if you live in South Florida, they've got your back. And they only use top-quality products that are locally made. They are a family-owned and operated business where you will only deal with the owner from start to finish. And they even offer competitive and affordable pricing as well as 100% financing with no upfront cost or down payment. So if you're looking for a trustworthy and reliable contractor who offers quality service, make sure to contact All Pro Construction Builders. They will provide you with a free estimate and help you protect your home in less than 8 weeks. You can call Danny, that's the owner, at 305-484-4429 and make sure to mention 5 Reasons Sports to get a 10% discount. Again, you call Danny at 305-484-4429. Mention 5 Reasons Sports and you will get a 10% discount on your estimate. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Just yesterday, the Miami Dolphins pulled off a trade that brought Jaylen Ramsey, of all players, to the Miami Dolphins. And again, all Chris Grier had to do, if you didn't catch yesterday's show, was a 3rd-round draft pick and Hunter Long. Obviously, they had to pay Jaylen Ramsey. That's part of it. But that comes with the territory of signing the most prolific cornerback in the NFL right now. Whether you believe he's the best or not is a different discussion, but at the very least, again, he is top 5. And you just paired him with Xavier Howard. This makes the Byron Jones pairing look like nothing. This is nothing. Now Miami truly is a no-fly zone. Because are you going to throw to Xavier Howard and test his ability to make interceptions? Or are you going to test Jaylen Ramsey? Neither option is particularly appealing for quarterbacks. And now speaking of quarterbacks, here we are. One of the biggest questions of the offseason was, what are the Miami Dolphins going to do with the backup quarterback position? Literally before I ended up recording the Jaylen Ramsey show, which was my debut show. Again, I mentioned during that show, I ended up having to scrap everything I had recorded before because what I was going to talk about was literally all the different candidates Miami could have had as the backup QB. Because there was a lot of talk about who was going to do the backup job for Tua. Was it going to be somebody like Gardner Minshew? No. Was it going to be somebody like Andy Dalton? No. My preferred choice was Jimmy Garoppolo. But obviously, according to what we're hearing from this, is that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to get somewhere around $20 million a year from the Las Vegas Raiders. So, obviously, the Miami Dolphins were not going to pay Jimmy Garoppolo $20 million. Now, what this does mean is that my co-host Ron Caniff on Pulse of Fins Nation lost another bet to a good friend of mine and a recurring guest, Chad Ronnebaum. Seems like every time they make a bet, Ron loses. So Jimmy Garoppolo goes back to being a starter with the Las Vegas Raiders. And who does that leave for the Miami Dolphins? Ironically enough, it's somebody who was also in the discussion for backup quarterback. It's Mike White. So what exactly does that mean for the Dolphins? Okay, so let's break it down. Mike White, obviously, he's a South Florida native. He actually grew up being a Miami Dolphins fan. And he went on the Joe Rose show and said that he would love to be the backup for the Miami Dolphins because that's his hometown team. And now, here he is. He is the backup quarterback for Tua Tagovailoa. And for lack of a better description, He's very Ryan Fitzpatrick-like in his approach. He is somebody who you're going to give him the football, and he's either going to get you a massive win or he is going to stink up the joint. But at the very least, you know for sure that if you give the ball to Mike White, you're going to have a chance to win the game. Obviously, his greatest moment was when it was back in 2021, and he was starting for Zach Wilson, who had gotten injured. He threw for 405 yards, 3 touchdowns against the Cincinnati Bengals on Halloween, and he set a record for the most completions by a player in his first start with 37. And obviously for Mike White, that's a big accomplishment. He actually won AFC Offensive Player of the Week that week. So kudos to him for that. Now, his overall record as a starter is 2-5. 8 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Not particularly groundbreaking, I guess you could say. But at least in his first start in 2022, when Zach Wilson stuck his foot in his mouth and basically said that he is not to blame for anything that happened with the offense, and why did the offense suck? Oh, it wasn't my fault. Obviously, that kind of pissed off his teammates with the Jets because he basically threw his defense under the bus, because that's not cool. The only reason you were even in the game was because of your defense. So now here comes Mike White, who's coming in to start, basically because A, Joe Flacco was injured, and B, Zach Wilson was benched for being a brat. So Mike White, who his teammates were thrilled when he started to play, by the way, they started wearing t-shirts about Mike White. That's how much they were happy about his being the starter. Mike White went up to the Chicago Bears and said, watch this. He threw for 315 yards, 3 touchdowns, and the Jets ultimately won that game 31-10. And they had a great time. Now, granted, Mike White's next couple of games were not nearly as inspiring. Against the Vikings on Week 13, he went 31-57 for 369 yards, but he threw 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. Against the Buffalo Bills, they lost 12-10. He went 27-44 for 268 yards, and he didn't throw an interception or a touchdown. So basically, he was just there. And then, of course, the multiple rib injury thing happened, and they were kind of forced into a bad position. But either way, as far as backups go, Mike White is a solid choice. He's not somebody who's going to threaten Tua Tagovailoa, because I saw a bunch of those responses over there that Mike White was going to come in and take Tua's job because Mike White is a very electric player when he's in the game, when he's in the zone. Okay, stop it. Enough already. We're literally taking every single potential quarterback who is out there and saying, oh yeah, this guy could totally replace Tua. Enough already. So Mike White is the backup. We're good. His deal is for 2 years, up to $16 million. And again, the language up to $16 million tells me that when the actual contract details come out, there's going to be incentives thrown in there. And again, these incentives, I'm assuming, are going to be based on playing time. We obviously don't want Mike White to get much playing time because that would imply something happened to Tua again. And we don't want something to happen to Tua. We want for Tua to play throughout the whole season. I am going to hope and pray that that is exactly what happens. That Tua Tagovailoa and his jiu-jitsu training, that it will somehow pay off and he will not have any more concussions. Everybody can stop talking about how his career and his life is in danger, because apparently Tua Tagovailoa is the only player in the whole NFL who can take multiple hits and somehow his whole life may be in jeopardy. Other players have taken conks to the noggin multiple times throughout a season, and everybody just shrugs it off because it's no big deal. I don't understand why Tua is the only one who's apparently made of glass and everybody's concerned about his well-being. Okay, I believe you. Not. So there are some incentives probably for Mike White. All right, works for me. That means that if push comes to shove, Miami may actually save a little bit of cash if he doesn't end up playing that much. I like that deal. I think it's a fantastic deal. South Florida native. He gets to come home, play on his favorite team, and he's the backup. He'll probably compete with Skylar Thompson. I don't think Skylar Thompson will beat him, but there is something to be said about the fact that Skylar Thompson has actually been in this system for a year and Mike White is coming in fresh. But on the other hand, there's something to be said about the fact that Mike White has played under Mike LaFleur, who spent a lot of time with the San Francisco 49ers under Kyle Shanahan, the exact same place that Mike McDaniel came from. So their offenses are fairly similar. Obviously, there's some change in terminology. He's going to have to figure that all out. But Mike White is not going to have as big of a learning curve as we think he will. Because again, Mike LaFleur and Mike McDaniel have like the same tutor, so to speak. They have very similar offenses to each other. So it's basically like a cousin system. It's almost the same system. It's just there's some tweaks here and there. They're going to be needing some changes. And Mike White can easily get this job done. All he has to do is prove that he's better than Skylar Thompson. And again, I want to give credit and respect to Skylar Thompson because he was thrown in a bad situation last year. Several times, it was expected to be Teddy Bridgewater who was going to get the start, and something happened to him, and he wasn't able to play. And so Skylar Thompson had to come in and basically come in cold and not know exactly what he was doing. Against the Vikings, he started off pretty strong, and then obviously he got hurt. And now, I don't have any words for what happened against the Jets. And as far as the Buffalo Bills game, yes, he did almost beat them. I feel like that was more the Bills being really, really bad than Skylar Thompson being good. But they did almost win. And so I have to give some credit to Skylar Thompson. Maybe he manages to beat out Mike White after a year in this system. Maybe he does. I don't think it will happen. I think Mike White will beat him pretty soundly, to be perfectly honest. But he'll get his chance to prove it. And if he does, well, let's see how much guaranteed money is being given to Mike White. That's what I want to know. Because if we can cut him off and say, oh, Skylar beat you, okay. I'm not going to really lose that much sleep over it. Now let's talk about David Long Jr. So a former Tennessee Titan, this guy was being projected to potentially get up to $50 million in free agency. And once again, I don't care what anybody says. Chris Grier is the new godfather. No, the Dolphins have not won a championship with him in charge. But to win a championship as football is a lot more difficult because in basketball, you can squeeze a lot more superstars and the roster is a lot smaller. In football, right now, Chris Grier is the godfather of the NFL. I'm sorry. I don't care what anybody says. He managed to not only get Jaylen Ramsey. Now watch this. This is crazy. Apparently, there was a discussion between Jaylen Ramsey and David Long Jr. over dinner not that long ago. And they were talking about how cool would it be if they were both to land in Miami. David Long Jr. just signed with the Miami Dolphins for 2 years and $11 million. A 2-year, $11 million deal for a up-and-coming linebacker who many believed would get up to $50 million in free agency. And not only that, David Long Jr. is one of the best run-stopping linebackers in the NFL. And he also has the ability to be very effective in coverage. He basically does everything you want for a linebacker. So if the Miami Dolphins end up letting a Landon Roberts walk and he doesn't want to come back and be a reserve, they're good. The only thing that's going against David Long Jr. at this point is, yes, he's another risky health factor. He might have some hamstring trouble. But you know what? In order to get some of these guys, you have to be willing to take that risk. There are a lot of players who end up getting hurt and it just happens. You can't really do anything about it. So we can't always assume the worst when it comes to these guys because otherwise you don't get some of these really good players. David Long Jr. is a complete linebacker and he is exactly what was missing in this defense. And the Miami Dolphins got him for a bargain price. Literally every single analyst is coming out and saying, whoa, wait, that's it? How did the Dolphins pull that off? And that's something that they've had to say a lot so far this offseason. How did the Dolphins pull off getting Jaylen Ramsey for a third-round pick and a tight end nobody even knows the name of? How did they manage to get somebody like David Long Jr. to agree to a 2-year, $11 million contract, even though he was projected to get like $50 million because he's just that much of a fast riser? I don't think anybody realizes yet just how good of a signing this was. And quite frankly, until I did some research, I did not even know how good of a player this guy was. In many ways, I believe David Long Jr. is going to end up being the linchpin for this defense. And once again, this is Vic Fangio doing what he's doing. You really think that there are not a lot of players who are out there looking at this and saying, oh, I can play with Vic Fangio? I can play with a legendary defensive coordinator, the guy who everybody is trying to copy his defense because it was just that good? It's possible that David Long Jr. is here for multiple reasons. Number one is because if he plays in Miami, he has a chance to make himself look like a really, really elite superstar, and maybe he can cash in later. He's only 26 years old, so it's not like his time is ticking yet. The other factor might be the fact that he gets to play with Jaylen Ramsey because, again, that whole story is something to consider. So all in all, this defense just keeps getting more and more stacked. And by the way, speaking of which, I still firmly believe that Melvin Ingram comes back to Miami. I still firmly believe that. Maybe it won't even be as much as it was last year because, again, who would not want to try to chase a Super Bowl ring with this defense, the way that it's being constructed, and with who is actually doing the constructing? Vic Fangio, again, is one of the best defensive coordinators in football, and he has what kind of pieces? Oh, yeah, Jalen Ramsey is there, Xavier Howard is there, Bradley Chubb is there, up-and-coming stars Jaylen Phillips and Javon Holland are there, Christian Wilkins is there, and now you have David Long Jr. you're going to add to that. If I'm Melvin Ingram, I'm saying, oh my gosh, I got to be a part of this now. And by the way, Jordan Poyer, who has been connected to the Dolphins because he keeps practically waving a neon sign that says, sign me please. He's got to be looking at this team and thinking, I've got to be a part of this. I really do. And if he does decide that he's going to force his way to Miami, I'm not going to be upset. I'm going to look at him and say, welcome to the family. Because not only are you weakening a divisional rival, because Jordan Poyer was a staple of that Buffalo Bills defense. Yes, he's a little bit on the older side, but again, age does not necessarily mean you're suddenly no good. Jordan Poyer is still a solid contributor, and he could be the final missing piece on that defense. Because now that David Long is there and the linebacker core is settled, not that I don't expect the Dolphins to add more pieces to that anyway, you add Jordan Poyer to that mix, and name me one spot on that whole defense that you can look at and say, well, maybe that's the weak spot. It doesn't exist. It does not exist. Who are you going to challenge? You're going to challenge David Long? You're going to challenge Jalen Ramsey? You're going to challenge Xavier Howard? You're going to challenge Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, Christian Wilkins, Zach Sealer? You're going to challenge Javon Holland? You're going to challenge Jordan Poyer? Who? Where are you looking as a quarterback to attack the Miami Dolphins defense? This is starting to remind me of the old days when it was Jason Taylor, when it was Adewale Agunlie, when it was Zach Thomas, when it was Sam Madison, Patrick Surtain, Brock Marion, Terrell Buckley, Daryl Gardner, Tim Bowens. Where was the weak spot? It didn't exist. And again, this is just day one of free agency. Day one. The Miami Dolphins added Duke Riley back. That's something that's going to be, okay, he's a good reserve. Great. Glad to have you back, dude. There's still so much work to do. And Chris Grier I sincerely believe that he's going to keep his foot on the gas pedal. Still have to extend Christian Wilkins. I would heavily consider extending Zach Sealer as well. And in doing so, they would basically add more cap space. I am sure that they're going to make it so that obviously their cap hits will be low starting off so that they have more room to work with in upcoming seasons. Cap is probably going to keep going up as time goes on, so they'll have more and more space to work with. Other players will get restructured. Other players will get extended. Some players will get released as better players get developed. If you are a Miami Dolphins fan, I'm telling you right now, get really, really, really excited because this is it, guys. This is the Super Bowl run coming up right here. On paper, this is the strongest roster I have ever, and I mean ever, seen them have. As long as I have been covering this team, this is the strongest roster I've ever seen them have. Even the Ndamukong Suh years. And again, this is only day one. We'll be back tomorrow with more Fins Nation. And of course, as you are listening to this, there is going to be another episode of Pulse of Fins Nation that will be happening at 7:30 p.m. So make sure you're tuning in for that. I'll be doing it live. I'll have Ron Caniff. I'll probably have Chad Ronnebaum. I'll probably have Alfredo Arteaga. It's going to be an awesome, awesome time. By the way, if you haven't joined OnlyFins for only $3 a month, the link is in the description below. That's where you can get in on some of the greatest insider information, courtesy of the 3 yards per carry crew, and you can get in on some serious chatter with some diehard Dolphins fans. So you're going to really enjoy that. And again, it's only $3 a month. You're not going to get much better than that. And once again, go ahead and mention, go to prizepicks.com, use the promo code 5, that's F-I-V-E, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. If you want to get in on the fantasy football game and you're not sure how to do it, you want to make some extra cash, go to prizepicks.com. I guarantee you that you are going to have a great time doing that. And once again, if you are a South Florida resident and you're looking to protect your home or business with impact-rated windows and doors, make sure you contact All Pro Construction Builders who specialize in impact window and door installation. They only use top-quality products that are locally made, and they are family-owned and operated business where you will only deal with the owner from start to finish. They offer competitive and affordable pricing as well as 100% financing, no upfront cost or down payment. And if you're looking for a trustworthy and reliable contractor who offer quality service, make sure you contact Contact All Pro Construction Builders and call Danny at 305-484-4429. Again, that's Danny, 305-484-4429. And make sure you mention 5 Reasons Sports to get a 10% discount and get your free estimate to help protect your home or business in less than 8 weeks. That's going to be it for this show. We will see you all tomorrow for more Fins Nation.